Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Lincoln Debate. My name is Daniel Onescu, and I'm the founder of My Local and the editor of The Lincolnite, which thankfully you all read, and that's why we're all here. For us, community and local democracy has always been at the core of what we're doing, and in the past 14 years, we've been reporting on what's happening in Lincoln, in Lincolnshire, and being part of the conversation. And informing people in this general election is more important than ever. And this is why you are all here tonight. It's the 7th such event that we've organized, and tonight is your chance to see and ask questions to your Lincoln MP candidates in this debate. We have all of this has been a bit short notice, as you know. So we have invited all 9 candidates in the Lincoln constituency, and one has respectfully declined. His name is Craig Marshall of the Social Democratic Party, and the second one is Loria Victoria Ashby, an independent, which is why I want us all to thank the present candidates for their engagement in this crucial process. Our host for the debate tonight won't be me. It's John Grubb, who we'll be introducing in a second. He's a seasoned newspaper journalist and former editor of the Lincolnshire Echo, and he has a vast 25-year experience in journalism and media. So without further delays, let's have a quick round of applause for John and our candidates before he introduces us to the rest of the evening's proceedings.
Thanks, Daniel. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and candidates. Thank you for coming this evening. As Daniel has so eloquently said, my name is John Grubb, and I'll be putting your questions to the Lincoln MP candidates present here tonight. I'll also be doing my best to moderate the discussion and ensure that all candidates have an equal chance to speak. So here's how we're going to proceed this evening. To kick off, we're going to have each candidate giving you a short introduction about themselves and their pledges, which will last about 45 seconds. Once we've done that, it's down to the questions. I'll be calling your name if you've got a question tabled for this evening. One of the Lincolnite staff here will give you the microphone to read your question. We're going to be working in themes tonight, so there's a chance that there'll be a couple of questions on any particular themes. It'll be my job to try and summarise those 2 questions and pose them to the candidates, who will each have 2 minutes to answer. Depending on the time, how we're doing for time, you might get a chance to give your reaction to the answers or pose any follow-up questions. The candidates are sat in an order which has been decided on the time-honoured method of drawing lots. So we'll, with each question, go from 1 on the left to 7 on the right, although as the person with the podium, I may decide at any point to reverse that order just to keep the candidates on their toes. So at the end of that, each candidate will get an opportunity to give their closing statements, and then that should take us through to about 9:30, depending on how things go. Before we get officially started, there are a few ground rules. Please refrain from booing. We want a respectful and constructive debate. Feel free, though, to applaud after each candidate speaks if you want to show your support for the candidate or the answer. One more thing, there are no fire drills scheduled for this evening, so if we have a fire alarm, leg it. No, I'm only joking. Go to a fire exit. I don't think the candidates drew lots for access to the fire exit for this evening, so that'll be interesting to see who makes it first. Okay, so without any further ado, let's kick off then with the candidates introducing themselves, and we start with Jamie from the Reform Party.
Yep, on.
I think it's on.
Yep, it should be on, yeah. Okay. Hello, I'm Jamie Lee McMillan. I'm your candidate for Reform UK in Lincoln, and our policies are, we're going to increase your personal allowance. Is this not close to my mouth?
Yeah, a bit closer.
Okay. Yeah, originally I had a tag one. From the beginning. Yeah, okay. Right. We're going to increase your personal allowance so that you are not paying income tax on anything which is under £20,000. We're also going to save you roughly around a touch over of about £500 on your energy bills. And also we're going to mandate via cuts, so it won't be coming out of your taxes, saving £5 in every £100 which is used in government. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally Horscroft and I'm the Green Party candidate. This country is one of the richest in the world, yet years of austerity have left millions of people having to choose between heating and eating, with a cost of living crisis and an energy crisis. Green Party policies include a real living wage, investment in essential public services, social housing and infrastructure, and bringing our failing privatised utilities back into public hands. We are also facing a climate crisis which successive governments have failed to address in any meaningful way. All talk and very little action. Green Party policies would prioritise the essential rapid transition to a zero-carbon society, creating jobs and building in resilience for future climate shocks. A carbon tax on polluters would provide money to invest in a green transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy.
Sorry, Sally, you're going to have to hurry you. That's your 45. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charles Shaw. I represent the Liberal Party, which is not quite the same as the Lib Dems, but good wishes to them. The Liberal Party is, of course, the original Liberal Party and those who didn't join with their merger. We're a party which essentially, our main plaque at the moment is about the freedom of the individual and particularly around freedom of speech. But we're a party of reconciliation and forgiveness. So we are a party concerned about reconciliation and peace initiative in disputes across the country. We are massively in support of public transport and naturally, because I must tell you I'm a youth and community worker by background, although I'm getting aged, we are passionately support of better local, not giant, but local community youth facilities.
Charles,
we are a community party and
Charles.
I've just been told we've finished. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, I'm Hamish Faulkner. I was selected as the Labour candidate in December 22 by the local Labour Party, and I've been delighted to knock on thousands of doors since then. Listening to people in Lincoln, it is absolutely clear it is the cost of living and the NHS that is top of people's minds. Lincoln is a brilliant city, but it needs change. I'm the only person on this stage who can deliver change on the 4th of July. We've had 14 years of the Conservatives. They have failed this country, and it is time for change.
Hello, I'm Linda Richardson, candidate for the Workers' Party. As a former carer, NHS worker, humanitarian campaigner, I'm not a career politician. I'm using my own money to come forward and stand against the big parties. Nothing ever seems to get done for the people who need it most. And I want to open an office here in Lincoln to give us all a say for once. I'm sick of two-party politics that never get met. Inequality is the main source of our problem in our society, and any politician that doesn't see that really shouldn't be doing this job. In a country where there are more billionaires, often at our expense, whilst people go without basic necessities, is a disgrace to our nation. We all feel hopeless shame at our governments, complicit with aiding and condoning genocide. We need to live without the fear of war in a society where we can be valued instead of being pitted against each other.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Carl McCartney and I'm the Conservative Party candidate. Been lucky enough and had the honour and privilege of being the Member of Parliament in Lincoln, first elected in 2010. However, I first stood in 2005, so I've been around a while. I believe I have a proud record in Lincoln, whether that's infrastructure for transport, whether that's trains, cross-country, direct to London, whether there's improvements to the roads in and around Lincoln, including the Eastern Bypass. got a proud record of making sure that I've been putting Lincoln first. That's for people who live here, people who work here, people who study here, and people who visit. Because part of the economy, one of the most burgeoning sectors, is probably our hospitality sector. Thank you very much indeed for being here this evening.
Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see everybody here this evening. I'm Claire Smalley. I'm the Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate. I'm very shocked to be here, very surprised. I became a councillor 5 years ago, and it's been an absolute pleasure to represent the area that I live. It's the same area I've lived for 30 years. It's the same area that I teach as a primary school teacher and brought my children up as well. So, you know, I'm certainly vested in the area. I became a councillor because I thought my area deserved better than the Labour councillors that were representing us at the time. And I guess I'm here because I think at Westminster we also deserve better. So I'm here to provide that change that people want and deserve, and here to, you know, support everybody for what they need. Local services, better funding for NHS. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to the candidates. So our first question this evening is from Victoria Araj. Victoria.
Good evening, candidates. It's good to see you all here today. I'm a Palestinian member of the public from Lincoln, and I'm asking this question rather than a question about nationalism. And that's because I believe that universalism and humanity should dictate our politics, not the nationalism and extremism that you seem to court. My community, the Palestinian community of Lincoln, have continually been othered, been dehumanised, been silenced and silenced and silenced time and time again. Whatever your politics might be, we can see the situation in Gaza. Tens of thousands of orphans.
Victoria, sorry to interrupt. Is there a question in here?
Yes, I will
Can we get to the question, please?
I will get to my question. The United Nations have warned that at least 50,000 children are at risk of imminent death from malnutrition. The ICJ in March 2024 have asked for a cessation of bombing, which the main parties in this room have completely ignored. The Conservative Party and the Labour Party have refused to call for an end of the sale of arms.
We do finish at 9:30.
Well, that's plenty of time for a lecture about Gaza.
Yeah, but the rest of the audience would like to ask their questions.
Okay.
I know you've got a question, and I'm sure we all sympathise with what you're trying to say. Can you get to your question,
Well,
please?
I'm glad you sympathise with Carl McCartney and Hamish Faulkner do not. My question is, will each and every one of you put aside your political differences, bring out a statement this evening and call for the immediate halt of arms to the Israeli genocide state? You have a responsibility, considering our history with and a current role as a county with the RAF. Will you call for the immediate restoration of UNRWA funding and commit to publicly denouncing companies that operate in our county who are complicit in genocide, including Teledyne, BAE Systems and Siemens?
Okay, thank you. To try and sum that up, if I can, it seems to me that what Victoria's asking is, if you are elected, what will you do about the crisis in Gaza? Is that a fair summary of that? Well, can you summarise in one sentence exactly what it is you're asking?
I'm asking for a statement by every single person here, whether they're elected to office or not, this evening or tomorrow, which calls for an end to the onslaught against the Palestinian people in Gaza, which calls for an end to arms sales to the Israeli genocide state, and which reinforces the county's commitment to peace and humanitarianism, which is what RAF people died for.
Okay, well, I'll have another crack at this then. Can I ask the candidates to answer the question, what is their view on calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza? So, Jamie, do you want to start?
Reform UK condemns all the loss of life on both sides in the conflict. But equally, we won't be taking anyone else's manifestos, anyone else's contracts. We have our own. That's what we are standing for. And we really should be concentrating more about what's happening in this country than interfering in other people's wars and affairs.
Okay, thank you. Sally.
The Green Party has called for a ceasefire since October the 7th, from day one. My personal view is that, yes, we should have a ceasefire. A political solution to this is the only way, and it is long overdue. And yes, I do agree we should stop selling arms to Israel or providing them to the Israeli government. One has to differentiate between the Israeli people and their government. Yes, we should stop providing military aid now.
Okay, thank you.
Your straight question was, shall we stop the companies selling arms to Israel, was the bottom line of what you were saying, right? Your general statement around that and arms, I have to say, is already our policy, and we've already signed up to. It's about the numerous emails I get from your various groups. And as past chair of the Centre for Reconciliation, I really shouldn't say anything else, right? But in real terms, just like we don't want guns in America, we don't want armaments around the world. They're out of control. We might not have things in our country, but the armaments are actually out of control across the world. And the trouble we have in Gaza, whether it's one side of it, is people thinking that's the way to solve issues. And if you look at the world, as I've said in environmental terms as well, as a big apple with lots of maggots on it, eating it very quickly, there are lots of wars eating it very quickly. And therefore, no, we need to stand up for this. Right. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Victoria. So the short answer is the Labour Party supports the ceasefire in Israel-Palestine. For those who know me, I was a diplomat for a long time. I worked on conflict reduction. I was part of peace processes. And the horrible truth is there has been terrible bloodshed on both sides, but there was going to be no solution in the Middle East without both sides talking to each other. Nobody is suggesting that Britain or America or anybody else sends troops into Gaza. So in the end, the people who are there are going to have to speak to each other, and that is going to be incredibly difficult. My own view is that what the Israeli government is doing is making it so much more difficult to get to peace talks, and there is clearly very significant tension within Israel and within Palestine about how this can be done. I went in December because I know how important an issue this is, not just for people in Lincoln, but people across the country. There are no immediate easy answers, but what is Labour's policy? Labour's policy is there needs to be a ceasefire now. The operation in Rafah is killing far too many people, and we need to get back to a two-state solution, however difficult that is going to be on both sides.
Oh, well, everybody knows, I think, here what the Workers' Party has at the top of their agenda. The ceasefires hasn't been called for by the main parties. In fact, blocked.
It has, and it's Labour Party policy. David Lammy was here today. Labour is calling for a ceasefire.
Yes, but it was blocked at one point. Anyway, Our policy is, and personally, I wish to see the people that have blocked the policy previously then, I wish to see them prosecuted for war crimes because they've been complicit and caused... By being complicit, they've been aiding and abetting, supplying arms that were components that they wouldn't have been able to do these things without. And I believe that every one of the main parties that were involved with this should actually be in The Hague. I'm absolutely disgusted at our government that we can sit and watch children being murdered. Over 100,000 people have been murdered or maimed, and it's an absolute shame to our society. It really is that our government has taken the action it has, and I'm disgusted.
I don't think anybody would not want to have a ceasefire, but unfortunately it's my belief there will not be a ceasefire until all the hostages, whether alive or their dead bodies, are returned to Israel.
Thank you for your question. I think, this is another example really where we've been let down by the government by not calling that a ceasefire. The Liberal Democrats did call for a ceasefire. It's something that I would strongly want. It's the right thing to do, and obviously in the long term what we need is a two-state solution. As a party we're very proud to have the first Palestinian MP, and certainly following sort of Layla Moran's personal family stories etc. has been a fabulous insight, and certainly wish that ceasefire can happen sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next question is from Jason Madison.
Oh, this is for all candidates. What will you do to clean up Lincoln's pavements and roadsides, along with making them safe, tidy, clean and accessible for all? Thank you.
Reform UK is going to use already allocated funds, which is for continuing the building of the infrastructure which is around. But also one of the highlights and more priorities really is to keep it restored within its own level at the moment, rather than filling it in with very cheap and very ugly looking tarmacs and other replacements, which has been used at the top around the cathedral. Especially when it has broken, it's already been there, so it could have been very easily replaced by just applying more of the sediment and medium and then put back on. So we'll be doing that.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? I've got a bit of an ear infection. I didn't quite catch what you said.
Right. What will you do to clean up Lincoln's pavements and roadsides, along with making them safe, tidy, clean and accessible for all?
Thank you. Roadsides and pavements, I think, are two slightly different issues. Pavements, yes, should be safe for everybody. 14 years of austerity have cut council funds into the bone, unfortunately. And maintaining roads and pavements is expensive. Councils have had to make choices about where their money goes. Yes, I quite agree. Pavements and roads should be safe for everybody, especially those with accessibility issues. Roadsides are slightly different. I'm not sure if you mean verges or, grass verges, etc. Grass verges, I think, are a wasted opportunity for more biodiversity. I would like to see our pieces of grass in the middle of roads. For example, the strip down near South Common near St Catherine's. It's grass, it has to be cut. It's sterile, there's very little wildlife on it. I would like to see all those sort of verges and our green little spaces planted up for biodiversity, for pollinators, low maintenance, low cost, and much better for the environment and for our wildlife. Insect numbers, weight has declined massively. I'm old enough to remember the 70s when you couldn't drive at night without having to get out and clean your windscreen because there were so many insects at night. Now, you see very, very few, and that's not good for us, it's not good for our environment, and it's not good for our wildlife. Thank you.
This is difficult because I'd like your vote. But I agree with everything Sally just said. Unequivocally. And Lincolnshire is a county which likes destroying its green. It's not the only county, but we just don't prioritise it. And so that is an important point. As to the litter, or as to the pavements, accessibility is one thing, and it is about design. And I often worry, because I'm a bit deaf, and I wonder if I go blind, and I look at the blind lumps and what have you, I wonder, what will it be like? What will I step into? And so on. So accessibility and money on that and design is really, really important. But I hate to quote David Cameron, because I'm quoting another country, but we're all in it together. Stop making such a bloody shit out of our pavements. Sorry about that, everybody. You'll get that recording and I'll be in trouble. But we do a lot of litter. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Good question. So what will Labour do about the roads? There was an obvious question about potholes. I'm not sure if you were talking about the sides of the roads or the roads themselves, but potholes is definitely something that gets raised the whole time. Clearly, we have in Lincoln, we've got Lincolnshire County Council responsible for the roads, the City Council responsible for lots of the pavements, and a government which, in my view, has starved both of the local authorities of the funds that they need to keep reasonable roads in a reasonable state. The Labour Party this week took the difficult decision we're going to delay the A27 upgrade in Sussex in order to fill 1 million potholes next year, which I think, as everybody knows, is urgently needed. What I'd say, one of my particular priorities in Lincoln would be about trying to make it a greener, more accessible space, including for people like me who are cyclists and people who use the pavements and walk, because we are so close and we've got so many great routes, but we are not quite the active travel city that we could be. And I think it would be a huge benefit to lots of people if we were an easier city to crisscross on a bike or walking than we are at the moment.
I think one of the issues is that the County Council dealing with the roads and the Lincoln City Council are dealing with the local infrastructure. Thereby, one blames the other sometimes, and things don't get done that should get done. And funding austerity has led us down the pothole paths of not getting much done at all. I've been speaking to people in the Bailgate recently and some shopkeepers, and they said that when they do finally get stones and slabs that are so bad and they have to be repaired, they do, but then the road gets shut and then the business gets affected. And it's very slow and shoddy work when it is done. So I'd like to see a lot more investment into our infrastructure. And the Workers' Party, we have a plan for that. And we have a large amount of money to invest from diverting the funds from windfall taxes, and we're going to be looking at all sorts of mending of all of the roads and new roads being brought in. So that's about it.
Starting with litter picking as an issue, I think there's nothing wrong with self-starting, and I've spent certain times down at Stamp End along the riverbank there, which has been at times overrun with litter. And it's actually a very nice part of our city, or could be, and at times looks a bit like a rubbish dump. So the benefit of having been around for a while, I know the people both at the County Council when it comes to potholes and also pavements at the City Council, but also at Lincoln Big, because one of the things that has annoyed me is certainly before the pandemic, we were approaching a 24-hour economy, certainly Thursday, Friday, Saturdays in Lincoln. But at 8 o'clock the next morning, Lincoln City Centre was not a pleasant place to walk or cycle or be. Lincoln Big do take a tax from businesses, but certainly the businesses that maybe sell kebabs or chips or whatever it might be that cause people to, generate litter need to be clearing up after themselves to make it a pleasant environment the next day for everybody who comes to our city to shop or do their business or whatever it might be that they've got in the city that day. One of the things you talked about transport, one of the things that I haven't achieved as yet, and I think I have achieved an awful lot of things I set out to do, is park and ride. And I think the public realm of our city would be transformed by having a proper park and ride system, whether that be like Exeter's, like Glasgow's, or like Chester's. I just see it as transforming our city and making it an even better and beautiful place than it already is.
Hi, thank you for the question. This just feels like I'm reading my emails, actually, as a councillor. I'm bombarded with pothole photos, people complaining that they've run over a pothole, ripped their tyre. They can't walk their children to school because there's cars parked, there's bins in the way, there's rubbish on the pavement. It is what I do day in, day out, and I totally do sympathise. Again, we're being let down by the Conservatives who run the County Council, who aren't fixing the potholes quick enough, who don't care about our roads and the safety of people on our pavements, and also the City Council, who just don't seem to be proactively making sure that fly tipping is removed and, making sure that message is there to not leave litter on our streets and our pavements. Recently we've had people who contacted us who, can't, leave their houses in a local estate in my ward because they can't get their mobility scooter down the road. One of my councillors did go out and try this out for himself, and it is horrific. And I totally agree, it needs sorting, and obviously that will be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Michelle Casso, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, so it falls to me to ask the question. And that is, what promises can you and your party make to bring down the cost of living and leave people with more disposable income at the end of every month? I'd be quite interested to hear, and this is very personal, given the independence now of the Bank of England, what can be done to persuade or bring down interest rates? Because I think most of the people here will be most hard hit by the increase in mortgage costs. Okay, so, Jamie.
Well, we have, as I said before at the start, we have the first part, which is to increase your personal income tax allowance to 20,000. That'll also be increasing to 20%. Oh no, it will be remaining the same from 20,000 to 70,000, 20% income tax, and further past that at 40%. So for the people on the lowest forms of income, that you're going to feel somewhere in the region of about £1,000 to £1,500 better off in that year, solely because you're not getting taxed on it as it comes in. The next part, when it comes to, you said fuel, where there's around 500 and a touch over, which I mentioned before, which will be coming off because we're going to remove the VAT on your fuel bills, as well as reducing about 20% per litre on the fuel itself. Then you turned around and you said about the Bank of England.
Mortgage rates.
Yes, mortgage rate with interest. Now, that is somewhat dictated via the market and how it's set. Now, we could put limits on it. However, that wouldn't really be good for independent enterprise. But it seems to be far better to get the Bank of England from being an independent entity and back being part of our government, so that we can be the ones which are directly in control, rather than having us basically as singular entity moving around making decisions without elected representation.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure the other candidates won't mind me just interjecting. I think you've said it a couple of times now, Jamie, about the how much better off we'll be with the cut in taxes. How are you going to pay for that?
Oh, yes, we have
It'll balance out across the piece.
Right.
You think you should just be allowed to keep saying we're going to cut things without asking how it's going to get paid for? No, but I don't understand why he's getting more time. Well, just listen. Sorry, Jamie, just very quickly, can you answer the question of how you will pay for these massive tax cuts that you're suggesting?
We have 50 billion, which will be coming from cutting the government waste. Quangos, there's a guy which has got a Quango, which is getting paid £600,000 a year. That's basically 60 pensions. He turns up maybe 4 or 5 times a year for that. There's several instances of that all the way through government. But that's only 50 billion of it. Then we've got the our reserves is having interest payments put on it. We're the only country in the world which is paying interest on those reserves. America isn't. Why should we? So we tell the Bank of England to stop paying it to the private banks.
Thank
35 billion for that one.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, sorry, on to Sally.
Could you just repeat the question?
Yes, of course. What promises can you and your party make to bring down the cost of living and have people with more disposable income at the end of every month? And what can be done about interest rates, mortgage particularly?
A key Green Party policy for several years has been a real living wage, currently set at £15 an hour, which would help to lift people out of poverty. We're committed in this manifesto to 150,000 new social housing a year, which would enable people to have warm, secure, well-insulated houses. We also would have an insulation programme for existing housing to help bring down people's bills, make their houses warmer and healthier. We are the Green Party, have a massive programme for renewable energy. We are an island. We're one of the windiest places in Europe, apparently. We are surrounded by the tides, which never stop. And believe it or not, the sun does shine sometimes. So we would not be relying on one form of renewable energy, but several. And as new ones came available, there's hydro, there's tidal, there's so many, all of which would help to produce cheap, clean energy. We'd also insist on fair tax so that all the big businesses, the multi-corporations, would pay their fair share of tax. I won't name names, but we all know who I mean, the big multi-corporations which insist they make no profit in this country and are ruining our high streets by undercutting small businesses. I've just jotted it down and I think that more or less covers it. A living wage, better housing, insulation, renewable energy, a cheap, clean source, and fair tax on big business.
It's very easy for people to say we'll increase the tax thresholds. Naturally, we need to do that, but it tends to follow as per inflation. As per disposable income doesn't become of as much value, we all feel a need to have more disposable income. The real problems are in the structure, as some of what Sally has just said. I can't talk about everything here. As you know in your own house, you've got to live within a certain budget. And whatever we say on Answers on this platform, that's what the government has to do. Britain does have extensive borrowings, which it needs to cut down, and that's the only way to strengthen, at the moment, the currency. Except as a very old person I used to work with a long time ago, Richard Wainwright, who was a Liberal MP and was a chartered accountant, used to say, just print some more. In reality, money is numbers, and it's how you control it. Britain is a minor reserve currency, but does have some control over the economic markets. And one last point, just to answer the mortgage thing. From many years ago, from the time of Harold Wilson, people destroyed what local authorities could do. Local authorities have terrific restrictions on them. And when I started work, if you weren't earning a lot, the local authority would give you a mortgage on a private house. You find the house, they'd help you out. All those powers have been taken away from local authorities. And progressively, we need to bring back the things that help people in those situations. Thank you.
I mean, it's such an important question. I was sat in people's houses when the Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss budget dropped, and the effect that it had on people who were at that point having to remortgage was absolutely massive, and it was pushing so many people. I remember one guy in Hartsholme saying, "Look, I just don't think I can afford my house anymore," and that was economic vandalism by the Conservative Party. So the Labour Party is committed to delivering economic stability. It's not a hugely ambitious ask, but we haven't had it over the last few years, and it makes a huge difference to everybody's pockets. So on mortgages, economic stability, we will retain the independence of the Bank of England, and we are having to make really tough choices in our manifesto about what we can afford as a consequence. I'll just mention two other things. The first is energy bills are the other thing that is a huge pressure on people's bills in Lincoln. We're going to set up a national Great British Energy Company. It will be a nationalised renewable energy company to try and bring down our bills. We've got a huge opportunity in Lincolnshire and in Lincoln. The university is already involved in a whole bunch of carbon capture, solar stuff. We've got Siemens doing hydrogen-powered small gas turbines. There are jobs and growth available for Lincoln through Great British Energy. And the last thing I'd say is about wages. Lincoln's economy is not working. We have the lowest wages of any university area in the whole country. We should be doing better than we are. We have fewer graduate jobs in this city than Rother Valley outside Rotherham. Our economy is not delivering for the many young people here who could make a real contribution to it. And getting those wages up will make a huge difference to people's ability to afford their life.
As a party, we've got a plan to have the minimum wage at £22,500 for everybody. It will be across the board. How we plan to do this is a transfer of wealth, because the inequality in our society has led to such devastating effect on the most vulnerable. How we will go about the interest rates is one of the things we'd like to do with the Bank of England is to put somebody representative of the people on the board, and so that we will be able to get more of a say that where they would be representing more of the people's living circumstances rather than just the super rich, and we will be considered for once if we have somebody representing us on the board. Thank you.
Inflation is the killer, and we've seen it go into double figures recently, but it's back under control and approaching the target of 2%. And that's something that the Prime Minister said that he was going to have as one of the 5 key things that he was going to work towards. And we've achieved that as a Conservative Party. Now, that will lead to all sorts of other benefits, and that will see a reduction in mortgage rates. I don't agree with the Reform Party in taking the independence of the Bank of England away. I actually think it's one of the few things I'd agree that Gordon Brown did that were good. Quantitative easing, you could argue about whether that is a good or a bad thing to the level that this country has utilised it over the past 4 or 5 years. But before the pandemic, our economy was doing really well. We were leading the G7, we were leading the G20. More people were being employed. That has continued since. We're not quite at leading from the front of the G7 and G20, but we're getting there. We're seeing growth this year, next year, and predicted to be over 2% by 26, 27. That's because of what a Conservative Party has done to put in place lots of things that with the pandemic were restricted and made difficult. The country borrowed an awful lot of money. I'd never heard of the word of furlough. We all know what furlough is now, and I think without furlough, lots of people would have been out of work and lots of businesses would have gone under. Thankfully, the now Prime Minister, who is Chancellor, made that decision, but that cost the country, and it has to be paid back. And we're on our way to doing that. So I think fiscal responsibility is something that I'm aware of, that myself, I've got quite a laissez-faire attitude, and I want to see less tax taken away from people, certainly the constituency in Lincoln, because I feel that they should have to say they earn the money. They should be able to spend as much of their own money as possible and not have it taken away by a government. Other candidates here don't agree with that, but that's my personal view.
Cost of living seems to have affected so many people in Lincoln. This is something, again, that I deal with all the time. Residents are coming to me worried about the cost of living, you know, their bills rising, everything is going up, and it's a big issue. As a teacher, you know, I see, you know, equally day in, day out that children are coming to school hungry. Obviously, one of our policies is to give free school meals to all the children. Also, you know, we had the Liz Truss fiasco, which crashed our economy and left us with, you know, chaos really in terms of people with mortgages, especially. You know, my son was very lucky to buy a house in COVID, but unfortunately is, you know, literally on the edge of his seat waiting to realise how much his mortgage is going to be. And that's something that, you know, desperately needs tackling. And it's something that, you know, I'll definitely be working towards to make sure that people of Lincoln get, you know, that what they deserve, and that every person who needs support gets it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question comes from Matthew Stevens. Matthew Stevens? Okay, well, I'll ask the question on behalf of Matthew then. If elected, how will you retain the talent that we produce in Lincoln at our universities and colleges, and how will you promote valuable and well-paying jobs in the area?
Well, from the first part of that, how to increase, you know, their stability once they've left education to keep the talent. One of the main parts will be to remove, for those, for example, the NHS. If you have a look at the A&E department, which is under Lincoln County General, it's quite bad, which I'd recommend everybody go have a look at it. But we're having more and more nurses and doctors leaving the NHS in order to go into private healthcare areas. One of the best ways of maintaining them is to give what we will be doing 3 years off of their income tax in one full go, followed by all of their educational, what would that be, educational loans and baggage which comes from it. We will also, if after 10 years they're still in it, and they've given us 10 years of service in the NHS, we'll be removing that from them. But this may also end up being applied to carers. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
To retain talent, you have to have a vibrant local economy with jobs and make it a nice place to live. Lincoln is a fantastic place to live, but it is a low-wage, low-income economy. And I've completely forgotten where I was going with that.
Just a reminder of the question, how do you retain the talent that we produce in Lincoln at our universities, and how will you promote valuable and well-paying jobs in the area?
It's difficult, isn't it? You have to bring business into the area. You have to retain it. James made an important point about the doctors and nurses in the area. We have a medical school now. How many of those, I know they're only just starting to graduate, but how many of them will stay in the area when the NHS is so underfunded and understaffed? And he also makes a very valid point about the A&E. I've had personal experience recently through my family of how long people are waiting in A&E because of the staff shortages and the resource shortages and the general underfunding. And I think there are no easy answers to this. You have to encourage business, but we need a spread of business. We need small and medium-sized businesses. They employ a lot of people in this country and this county and this city. And a mix of big business. We are lucky to have Siemens here and the university. But there are no easy answers for this one. All you can do, I think, is encourage business in the area, encourage jobs, and make it a nice place to live.
Lincoln is a great place to live. I can think of a lot of other places that are great places to live, but Lincoln is an absolutely great place to live. And the interesting thing is that what I was going to say is a lot of people leave Lincoln and come back. You know, you've tried the rest, come to the back to the best. But it's about quality of life as well. Talked about the economy. We all need a fair income, whatever job we're in. But to achieve that, income has to be more fairly distributed across the country. And it's not a simple issue because people all campaign for more pay. I have to say about universities, and this is what I'm probably out of line. I'm probably certainly out of line with some Tory thinking, which is when you go to university, and I've said this last year, when you go to university, when you qualify in something, or whether you don't go to university and you qualify another way because universities aren't everything, you do that because you want a profession or a job to do. Hopefully it's something you like, you do that job, but you do that job for the benefit of everybody else as well. You do that for the community. You don't do it because you think, I'm going to be a millionaire by doing this job. You do it because you're working together, you've got skills. And if we continue to sell the idea that you go off, you get qualifications, you'll get high wages, you'll have a big house, and you'll do this, that, and the other, well, you're just feeding the same system we've got. So we need a lot to think about. It's not the perfect answer, and I know I'm taking up a bit of time on that, but that is passionately my belief. Thank you.
So I talk to students, whether the colleges or the universities, about this every week. And there are two issues that people always raise. One is jobs, that there aren't enough well-paying jobs to keep people after they've graduated here. And the other one is housing. So on jobs, we have loads of SMEs in Lincoln. The Lincolnite is one that came out, started small from the university, working in digital. We've got a whole range of sectors where Lincoln is actually really, really good. We've got a really good engineering school, really impressive capacity at Siemens, at Dynex, at RAF Waddington. There's agri-tech stuff happening at the university, which is incredibly interesting and exciting and is exactly the kinds of areas that we could expect to see growth. But we do not have as much investment in Lincoln as we need. And so lots of those SMEs stay very small. And so they are not giving people the kinds of jobs that they need in order to stay here. Young people always say to me, they do want to stay in Lincoln, that actually the nightlife is quite good, it's a walkable city, it's very beautiful, it's relatively cheap to live here compared to other places. But they also have a housing issue. And I think probably unlike everybody else on this panel, the Labour Party knows we need to build thousands of homes in Lincoln in order to accommodate those young people. We're already doing it in the west of the city. We've got big ambitions. I brought the shadow housing minister here recently. I would like to see us build 10,000 homes around Lincoln over the next 20 years. I think it is really difficult, but really necessary.
I've been around lots of the university students that have just actually qualified, and not many of them stay in Lincoln at all. Nearly all of them, my son included, moved away because there aren't any decent jobs for them at the end of their courses. I would say out of my son's class, probably 2 people stayed and they'd already lived here. The rest of them, as soon as the course is finished, leaves. There's no decent jobs or decent wages left for them. And the distribution of wealth around Lincoln it's unequal. So the money is being spent in places where it shouldn't be. For example, I was speaking to some members of the mental health team, and they were telling me that at the moment there is a massive problem whereby they're having to pay £500 per day for patients to go out of the area to have extremely needed critical care, because there are no beds left in Lincoln. So we're paying literally private companies to take our patients rather than put the infrastructure into Lincoln. No infrastructure has been built up and no jobs and industry has been attracted. So as a policy, we would like to put lots of money into the infrastructure needed and into industry, and we do this by by building everything up from the scratch and re-nationalising rather than privatising, because everything goes to the private companies, and then it's a mismanagement whereby the only winners are the super rich and the shareholders of these companies, when in actual fact we could deal with a lot of these problems if we invested in our own people first.
I'm not going to talk our city down and the university. I think both universities have been a real boon for the city. The University of Lincoln was fledgling when I arrived in 2004, and I've done everything in my time as a Member of Parliament to aid and assist that to expand and to attract more students, with my view that eventually there'd be a critical mass of students who've got an entrepreneurial attitude. And I think we've seen that, certainly not just Daniel and his colleagues since around 2010, but before then and since. There's been a remarkable amount of startups and smaller companies that have grown. One being Inspire, which one of the other candidates here has visited, which I first visited pre-2010. I had 6 employees. It's now got over 150 and is renowned around the world. And that's with many companies here in Lincoln. There's been issues. One of the issues that I discovered on being elected was the lack of power that was available to the south of the city, which is why I've seen Teal Park only have Siemens on, really. There aren't any other real, what you call manufacturing or high-tech firms there. And that's all because of the lack of availability of electricity at a reasonable cost. That's changed, and I think over the next few years, you'll see various investments and more jobs coming there. But one of my views has always been that both universities, and I helped assisted Bishop Grosseteste to become a fully fledged university, and the college and the schools, we have great educational chances here in Lincoln. And I want the best for not just young people, but actually people of all ages, if they want a career change and move off into some other sector. And I think right across Lincoln, there are opportunities for people at all different sort of skill levels and wage levels. And I think it's a brilliant city. It's a beautiful city. One of the reasons why I pushed to have a medical school was because of the shortage of doctors, not just in Lincoln, but actually the whole of Lincolnshire. Before we had doctors training, we had nurses and pharmacists, and we'll do the same with dental nurses and the Centre of Excellence for Dentistry that we're likely to get in hopefully a lot quicker than the 11 years it took to get a medical school. But that's the role of any person who's lucky enough to have the honour and privilege of being a Member of Parliament. I think Lincoln is a beautiful city. I've done my best, my very best, to make it an even better place than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I actually went to BG myself, so that's where I got my education. I was late to education and went there as a mature student after having my children. So, juggled university life, bringing up a family and working part-time jobs. So I do kind of know what that feels like. I think the answer to the question really is how do we retain that talent, is making sure that we have the investment that Lincoln needs, making sure that there's companies here that are ready and willing to take on our excellent students who finish college, university, or even apprenticeships, that now do amazing work and have, really, really good courses that are there for people who want to take that route. And it is about getting investment, making sure that Lincoln's on the map, making sure Lincoln's somewhere people want to come and bring their businesses to, making sure the infrastructure's there, and that we're seen to be the city that means business. Thank you.
Okay, we've 2 questions now, which I think should go together. The first one's from Hilary Pritchard. Somebody got the mic there? Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask what plans you have to rescue the social care system and to build quality services. Thank you.
Thank you. And a second, I think, somewhat related question from David Mitchell.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the panel for coming along, and also to the Lincolnite for arranging tonight. My question, which is similar to the young ladies, is about convalescent homes. We are an ageing population. We all know that at some time we're going to need hospital care and social care. I have some figures from the King's Fund, which is a medical think tank, a hospital think tank, and we spent 1.7 billion a year on the bed blocking that is happening in our hospitals. Over the last few years, we spent nearly 7 billion, and that is wasted money, really is. We all see the documentaries on the television about hospitals, about the ambulance service, and about care homes, and we know that it is a huge problem. So my question will be to you all, have you, any of you, in your manifestos, your contracts, or your wish list, have any of you looked at the provision of convalescent homes and taking it a stage further in a rural county like Lincolnshire to have cottage hospitals built? Because it's a time bomb, it's a ticking time bomb, and you all, unfortunately, all your parties, not you personally, seem to ignore this, and it's going to happen to us one day.
Thank you. So if I can just try and summarise both questions, I think essentially these questions around we hear lots of things about the NHS itself. These are about services that go around that NHS. And they seem as if they're in crisis. So what do you as candidates feel should be done about those adjacent services, I think is the best way of describing them?
Well, did that actually happen? Yeah, there we go. One way around. Well, Reform UK itself is more garnered towards the foundational parts for stuff to be built up. But if it's for me as a candidate, because that stuff needs to be worked out after our contract, which is 100 days, I do believe that having more sparsely separated medical facilities somewhere slightly along the lines of maybe smaller versions of the Nightingale hospitals where bed capacity is just available. Because, I mean, there's people going as far as North Kesteven have to go to Lincoln County Hospital in order to have A&E. And that once they get there, they're going to have to wait 48 hours and so forth and so forth. It takes a monumental amount of time for where they could just be inside of the beds. But when it comes to people which are older, there was, I was reading something which was about 2-3 weeks ago of what was known as caring villages, which was in design, which I think would be fantastic for our rural, rural environment in Lincolnshire. Have those medium to small things convalesced around Lincolnshire, have them built around there for those which are in the most needy care, and then they can get, with the extra beds, they can get the care which they need and then back to living independently. Yes, but bear in mind, that isn't something which is in our contract, because the contract is for overall our country's foundation infrastructure. But it would be something which would be built in that direction going forward after those 100 days. Thank you.
The Green Party have actually a major commitment in our manifesto to linking social care and the NHS. I really take your point about it, the bed blocking, but without the social care in place, those people can't leave hospital. They want to go home. They recover quicker at home. We need the social care in place to enable people to return home. The convalescent home, that's an interesting one. I hadn't actually thought about that. I was more into people going home. But yes, as a halfway point until they're fully recovered, that's an excellent. Although we do have a lot of care homes and we could perhaps make use of those as interim convalescent homes for people. In fact, I believe that already happens in some cases. So we would link the NHS and the social care aspects to enable people to return home earlier. This would also reduce pressure on the NHS, especially with its understaffing levels. So and I also agree with you on the point about smaller hospitals. I mean, Grantham A&E is now closed overnight, I believe. That's put huge pressure on Lincoln A&E and doesn't improve outcomes for people because they have so much further travel. We are a huge county, but very sparsely populated, as you will all know. So it makes sense to have smaller hospitals around the county with 24-hour access. But at the moment, these smaller hospitals, where do we get the staff from for them? At the last election, the Tories, the Conservatives, promised us 40 new hospitals. But where were the staff going to come from when the NHS was already, at that point, 140,000 staff short? I believe it's now 150,000. So these measures will take time to put in place because people have to be trained. We have to build the staffing levels up to be able to have the right staffing levels at these new places. But yes, I broadly take your point that smaller hospitals, convalescent, and a link between social care and the NHS so people can leave their hospital beds and go home to their own beds. Thank you.
I was worried about my last answer to the previous question because I didn't give a full answer. I simply talked about we do things for the community. But actually, having been a member of health authorities and family practitioners committees years ago when they existed, and numerous other things, I've seen the drift. A drift which applies to the health service, a drift which applies to the education service, and a drift which applies to a number of other services. And that is the drift towards big is better. And it just isn't. We do need specialisms in the health service, but to come back to the care issue, which is what this is specifically about, we cannot have the disparity in pay between care staff, people in old people's homes, people in other things, and people in other professions. It's ridiculous for the amount of work that they do. And we need that parity levelling out. And unfortunately, a few people at the top will need to make a cut to fund it as well. But absolutely, the drift towards big is better. Community doctors and nurses don't want this backlog on beds or anything else, any more than families. And people want to be able... We had tons of community hospitals once, and they were shut. This is the bottom line, because people thought big was better. And if you're career-minded, even with my suit on, wow, I'll get a bigger salary in a bigger hospital. It's somewhere, it's about humanity. Somewhere we've got to stop this. But the Liberal Party is absolutely committed to community hospitals and where that works. Because at some stage, the getting big is better has got to stop. And, you know, it's just what we're doing. And it's just not sensible, really.
Thank you, Charles.
But to give somebody else a chance, here we go.
So it's such a key question. I was at a care home on South Park and they were describing the process during COVID, where actually the care homes and the hospital were talking together every morning about trying to work out where patients could be discharged, because obviously the risks to elderly, vulnerable people were so acute. We in the Labour Party are committed to put more funding into the NHS, but we recognise it's going to have to change. And one of the ways it's going to have to change is we honestly need far fewer people in the hospital every day. One of the reasons we have so many people in the county A&E every day is they can't get a GP appointment, or they can't get a dentist appointment, or the care home is so thinly resourced that when there's any kind of problem, they summon an ambulance. And all of that is leading to these terrible waiting times, both for ambulances and in A&E when we get there. So I think one of the key things that the Labour government, if we are lucky enough to serve, will need to do is to try and work out how can you make the various different services work more effectively together. It happened exceptionally well at periods during COVID. This is possible, and I'm afraid we're almost in no less of a national emergency now than we were then. Every single week I hear terrible stories from people in Lincoln about 26 hours in the A&E waiting room after they've had an ECG from Lincoln County Hospital, or waiting 16 hours for an ambulance to turn up when someone has fallen and badly shattered their hip. We are going to need to take really urgent action to try and reform the NHS so that we can deliver the services that people expect, I'm afraid, at a lower cost, because a huge amount of money has gone into the NHS, but yet more is required. And as the gentleman was saying, who was asking the question, we simply cannot continue delivering in the way that we're delivering, because it is not going to be able to meet the needs which this city and this country are going to have of the NHS.
A huge amount of money is going into the NHS, but a lot of it is being siphoned off into areas that it doesn't need to be. My sister actually is a community nurse, and we were talking about the cottage hospitals actually just the other week. We were saying, as she goes to visit Lincolnshire, as we all know, is such a vast area, so she would be going from one patient in Boston, then back to Washington, then out to Sleaford, and so seeing different patients. And apart from the fact that you can't see very many people in that way, these patients are being neglected not because the work by the wonderful nurses is being done, but they might have to wait many, many hours then before they see somebody again. And in bad weather, sometimes they can't get to them. So we do need cottage hospitals or something to look at. We would look at bringing the NHS fully back into public ownership, because I don't think there's any place in our society where we care about people, but we put profit above our needs.
There's a number of issues to start off with. I think it's social care is provided by the county council in the main. And yes, they do need to work better with our NHS services in Lincolnshire, but I think they do very well currently, but not just in Lincoln, but actually when you take the whole of Lincolnshire, if not Greater Lincolnshire, into consideration, and the fact that you've got Skegness, where there's nearly 100,000 plus people each year who come in for 6 to 9 months. That increases our population of our county by 1/8. And those people have social care needs. So I've run a number of job fairs, as you might have heard or know, since I was first elected in 2010. Of the 45 to 55 businesses, organisations that come to those job fairs, by far the majority are either care homes or care providers. And that's because we have an ageing population in our county, and they are desperately looking for staff. It's an issue that the county council is aware of. They do get funding. They'd obviously like some more funding. Whether the answer is to give the NHS more funding, I'm not so sure. I just think that maybe they need to work in a more joined up way. But ultimately, for many years, politicians, and this is now Westminster politicians, have realised that social care needed to be tackled. And in my first term in Parliament, as a coalition member of Parliament, if you like, working with the Lib Dems, there was actually the three main parties were actually working towards what at the time looked to be something that was very promising for social care. But unfortunately, and this is politics maybe, but there was a vote on Syria that was supposed to be supported by the Labour Party. The then Labour Party leader, Ed Miliband, decided not to because he could embarrass the coalition government. And because of that, the deal that was in place or was going to be in place for social care never materialised. At this point in time, all politicians need to come together and actually deal with the problem that is social care in this country. And yes, our county.
Hi. I think social care and the NHS are incredibly linked, and I think you probably can't really solve one without trying to work on the other at the same time. I think, social care needs are so related to the NHS because a lot of people end up at our A&E, etc. I myself was there. It was actually reported by the Lincolnite for 40 hours waiting for a bed. And, I am also immune suppressed, so I've had a kidney transplant, and that's 40 hours of being very vulnerable, sat with lots of other people. Quite an eye-opener. I met lots of people and learned that I can sleep on a chair for two nights. But the serious note there is that actually this is affecting a lot of people, and a lot of people need our support, and this is a real issue that, you know, I do understand, and it matters. Most of us have somebody who relies on our social care system in our family. You know, we have been let down by the Conservatives. You know, they've been funding, you know, they fund our county council and, you know, fund our NHS. So that's probably where I feel the blame lies. We do have policies to give free personal care, more support for unpaid carers, giving them a better deal, increasing the carers allowance so that everybody gets a bit more money who does that at home. There's a lot more to do in terms of making sure people have GP appointments, dentists, and also making sure that people can stay in their homes longer if they wish. You know, I've had several fights with Labour City Council trying to get homes adapted for people who leave hospital and want to go home, but they don't have a ramp, or they've got steps, or, you know, they don't have the right shower facilities, etc.
One second left.
So yeah, definitely something that we need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting rapidly towards 8:30, so I'm going to have to, I'm afraid, ruthlessly cut 2 questions from our roster here. So my apologies to Sandy. Is Sandy Stratford in the room? Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to get to your question. My apologies. Stuart Collinson, have we got Stuart here? I'm really sorry, can't get to your question either. Perhaps you can collar the candidates afterwards if they hang around. We'll lock the doors, perhaps, and that'll make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go to one final question. I'm going to give the candidates just a minute each to answer it before we go to their closing statements. And that question comes from, now, is Ray Brown and Sue Brown, are they related? Okay. So given the time constraints, do you want to argue amongst yourselves as to which one of you asks the question?
Good evening. What would you...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Do you know, it's been great. You've made some good points earlier, but you're losing people's support.
Okay.
There we go. Right, ladies and gentlemen, just for the candidates, what would you do to restore people's faith in politics and politicians? Because at the moment, it's at its all-time low. So I'd just like to hear your answers for that. And I'd like to come back as well.
Okay, thanks for your patience, Mr. Brown. Okay, so we're going to reverse it this time just to put you on your toes. So we're going to start with Claire. 1 minute. How do you restore... Yeah, sorry, the microphone was at the wrong end. How do you restore faith in politicians?
Well, I guess, you know, I'm here not really as a politician, but as somebody who wants to fight for Lincoln. As I said right at the beginning, I'm very shocked to be here, really. I became a councillor because I was grumpy and I wanted to do things, and I was, you know, angry that my Labour councillors weren't doing anything. So I got out and I litter picked and I cleaned streets and I talked to people and I fixed things, and I made sure that people who came to me got a better deal and, you know, got a better service. I'm here tonight to represent the party again as your prospective parliamentary candidate for the same reasons, I guess, really, to stand up for Lincoln, to listen to you, and hopefully you realise that I'm here because I want to be here, not because I want to be at Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've, as I said before, been lucky enough, had the honour and privilege of being the Member of Parliament for Lincoln, and I've done my best representing Lincoln in Westminster. But the time that I really enjoy is being back here in the constituency. That's usually most Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. Getting to meet people, holding residence meetings, having my advice surgeries, helping those people who need the help of their local Member of Parliament. But also working with, be it councils, city, county, North Kesteven, or the other ones around Lincolnshire, and bringing in investment from the government, be that with the towns funds and things we've done, like the bridge we're going to get over. That's not really answering my question. No, I was going to get to that bit if you let me. Yeah. All of that is local, and I get that you're bothered by what's happening in Westminster. So have I. I've told my own party and those on the other side that we need to be better. I want the best 650 members of parliament because they're the ones who run the country. Yes, I want the majority of them to be Conservative members of parliament if I'm lucky enough to be one. But actually, we want the best 650 people to be our members of parliament because they are running the country. They're making decisions that affect how you live your life, our country's security, our energy security, what social care provisions are in place, all of those things. And unless we get better people involved in politics and wanting to be in politics, then unfortunately we end up with what we get. At least we're not America, 350 million people, and you get the two that they get to choose from.
Thanks, Carl. Okay.
So I think that I'm putting myself forward. I'm using my own money, and I'm from the background of campaigning for humanitarian causes, and I really care about people. But when I've spoken to people on the street, knocking on the doors, they feel really let down. They feel lied to, they feel cheated, and they feel like they don't have a voice anymore. How we get back that trust, I don't know. I just think we'll have to work very hard, and people need to vote in a different way, because if we keep voting for the same backwards and forwards, we still keep getting the same old lines and the same old stories. We have to have fresh faces and fresh ideas and people that are passionate, and we have to take people and question them. They need to be taken into account. Do we have a say at the moment? No, we don't. But we can make a difference and change things. We can vote differently.
You don't have a say anymore because your time's up. Thank you.
I think, thanks for the question. I think the short answer is we're going to have to deliver. And I just want to acknowledge Claire's answer earlier. That is such an appalling story. And we hear so many stories like that every week. And it was not like that not very long ago. It is really, really, really bad that Claire waited for 40 hours in A&E, in a vulnerable position, in a chair. And I hear stories like that every week. And it was not like that within our living memories. It is possible to do better than this. You know how we know? Because we were there. Not everybody, but most of us were here in 2010. So my answer is, I was in government for 14 years. We will have to deliver. If the Labour Party win, if we form the government, I'm under no illusions what will happen next. We will have to deliver under incredibly difficult circumstances with a terrible inheritance, both financially but in the public services as well. It is going to take really hard work to try and start to turn this around. But it is only when we start to turn it around so that you can feel it, so that when Claire next goes to the hospital, or anyone next goes to the hospital, it is starting to get better. Now, we're not going to turn the waiting list to zero instantly. Clearly not instantly. We think it will take us at least 5 years and hard work. But it is...
Hamish, your time's up, I'm afraid.
Hi. You restore confidence in politicians. And I have to say, if you even declare, if you stand for Parliament, you are a politician, right? That people have got to recognise that politicians are ordinary people too. And if the public continue, and the press and everybody else continues to put politicians on a pedestal, ready to knock them down when they just do something you don't like, disagree with you, runs off with the neighbour's wife, does whatever they do, then the problem lies there. It doesn't lie with the politician. So I'm sorry, that's my view. But I do believe, as a politician, that when you have key principles, there hasn't been a question. I've got to start to mention it, so I'm going to say I'd like to see Ofsted abolished, right? But if you've got things you believe in, then you've got to stand up for them as a politician. And like the post office issue, we need good politicians to stand up for people in the community who are being treated unfairly. But that's the only way you will get it from the point of view of politicians. But the public needs to see politicians as ordinary people, not people to make pot shots at for no good reason.
Thank you.
How do you restore faith in politicians? Vote for people you trust. People who... Not necessarily for the party. I think the media actually has a big part to play in this. I think the media in this country has spent years, decades maybe, encouraging the attitude in the public, apathy in the public, with the view they're all the same. I stood at the last election, and afterwards somebody I'd known for 20 years said she hadn't voted because there's no point in voting because they're all the same. And I looked at her and I said, Emma, I've known you all these years. You know me, we've worked together. Do you really think I'm like that they're all the same? And she kind of went, oh, I hadn't really thought about it. So vote for people you trust. Vote for people who want to help people, who care passionately about the country, about the people in it, about the economy, about the environment. And all the other
thanks,
things.
Sally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think that if just voting for people which you trust is going to be a problem, mainly because you can trust them in the instance, and then as soon as they get in, they can change their mind and do something completely different to what they said they were going to do. So I think it would be better to have some form of way of either having them fired so that there's a mandatory re-election if they break their word and don't do what they say they're going to do, or perhaps when they're removed from their own party, the same instance should be re-happening because you didn't vote for, even if you vote for party. That didn't happen. But an extra part would be that make it easier for the people themselves to be able to remove the person which is in power. At the moment, I think it's about 5% of the electorate, if they sign a nomination form, can remove their representative and make a new election.
Okay,
like
Jamie, sorry, I've got to stop you there. Your minute's up. Thank you.
Actually, only one of you really said about trust and integrity, that you should have trust and integrity. Only one of you. So that I find that a real problem. This is why people are disillusioned with politicians. You've got to talk about trust and integrity. You know, we're out here wanting to vote. People are here because they want to vote. They want to see what you can do. And only one person said trust and integrity. This is the problem that we have, not the press. It's yourselves that are not giving us that trust and integrity. Wow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. As a former member of the press, I thank you for not blaming me for the situation currently. So it brings us to the final wrap-up, which is each candidate has a minute to say their final goodbyes for this evening. Just to check, have we got any more protesters that want to say something before we start? No? You absolute dedication to screaming. You have to give them that. So, absolutely. Wow. Okay, so we're going to go this way again, if that's all right. Starting with Claire, you've got 1 minute to say your final piece, and then we're done. And I will interrupt if you go over the minute. Thank you. I'll be really strict. Okay, thank you. Go.
Okay, so thank you very much for this evening. It's been really great to be here. I didn't move to Lincoln 30 years ago to stand for election. I moved because I thought Lincoln was a wonderful city and I wanted to be here. Over that time, I've raised my family here, had a great life here, live here, work here. And I think, representing Lincoln would be amazing, would be amazing. But I'm here because we were let down. We're let down by our Labour City Council. We're let down by our Tory County Council. And, at Westminster too, we've not got what we deserve. So hopefully, if you can find someone that you can trust and believe in, hopefully, we can have something better for Lincoln. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. I will apologise initially for obviously my fan club outside, which have been chanting my name and putting me off a little bit. Hopefully not all of you. And Mr. Brown, I get what you're saying. We're going to stick up for everybody who's up here. I'm pretty sure that most people here have got trust and integrity. They might not have said it, but they put themselves forward to be candidates along with me. And the democratic right is you can choose to vote for one of them or not vote for one of them. or one of the two that aren't here. But everybody who's put themselves forward, I'm sure, certainly in Lincoln, has got trust and integrity, and I wouldn't knock that at all from my point of view. Just to round up, I'm standing for various reasons. Yes, I've been the Member of Parliament. I still think there's things to do. I've talked about Park and Ride. I'd like to see a Christmas market in Lincoln rather than, for whatever reason, that the Labour City Council cancelled it. I want to see various infrastructure improvements. I want to see those through. And I worry about what might happen if there's a Labour government or even a coalition government. But I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm the Conservative candidate. But thank you all very much indeed for your time.
Well, I can only say that if you keep voting for the same main parties, no matter how much we all want things to change, they won't. If you give an overwhelming majority to one party, they will have the opportunity to again do anything that they want to without the opposition getting in their way. We need a more balanced parliament where we are held to account and power cannot be so easily abused. If you vote for me in this election, I will take the voices of the Lincoln people to where it matters and put Lincoln in the driving seat instead of watching another 5-year crash. I'm doing this from the heart because I want to see a world where, without our permission, our taxes are not being used to collaborate with wars and genocide, where we can be as valued in work and at home and as much as the super rich and the powerful are. So vote Linda Richardson for the Workers' Party on the 4th of July, please.
So I'm sitting here because I believe Lincoln needs a change. I believe the country needs a change. And on the 4th of July, if you want a change, please vote Labour. If you elect me, I can promise you I will work as hard as I possibly can for Lincoln in Westminster, for Lincoln here in the city. And I will do my best to serve you as hard as I possibly can for the time that you give me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm obviously a Lincoln person, not originally, but 20, 30 years of my family being brought up here. I'm passionate about community services. I do take the point Carl's made here about integrity and answering Mrs. Brown's question, but that's up to all of us. And I tend to stand up for the things that I believe in, but also in fairness and equality. We absolutely need to have equality across a whole range of services and the things in our community. There are a lot of people treated unfairly. I would like to think there weren't, but absolutely there are. I did, because I thought the last question had come, mention the thing about Ofsted. I'm passionate about how our education system is as well, because I think it's, Ofsted needs to go, the pressure on teachers needs to go. But definitely taking services to the lowest community level and the community having some control in those.
Charles, sorry, I'm all for fairness and equality too, and your minute's up.
That's fine. I've finished now then, according to this gentleman.
You.
Bye.
Thank you all for coming and for the really interesting questions. We all want Lincoln to thrive and to be successful, but Lincoln will only thrive and grow as part of a county and country which is also thriving. We need real solutions, real action to help people out of poverty, action on housing, the energy crisis, and action to support and invest in our NHS and our public services. It's time for meaningful, positive action on climate change to protect the future for our children, our grandchildren, and the generations to come. It's time for sensible, practical policies offering real hope and real change. Vote hope, vote for change, vote Green. Thank you.
Well, I would say that the best thing which I could probably ask you to do is go to our website and read our contract. If you don't like anything in our contract, contact us and tell us why you don't like it. But inside that contract is something which is going to make every one of us better off. It's going to make all of our country better. And if it's done right and we have enough, we should be able to, inspire everybody. So thank you. Vote reform. And I really did enjoy coming here. Bye.
Okay, thanks, guys. Well, we did pretty well there. We're only 7 minutes over time. I want to thank all the candidates for being here, for being ever so well behaved, to sticking to their times. Thank you all for coming. I hope it answered some of your questions, and I hope you all have a safe journey home. Thank you. Thank you.